Dude, for some reason, Blizzard keeps coming through and hot-fixing all of my tips. I've been releasing daily tips for you guys, and for some reason, Blizzard keeps fixing them. And so let's kind of talk about some of the ones that they have fixed and what you should be doing differently if you want some advice as to how to kind of deal with some of the mechanics in the new world of dealing with these mobs. So basically, just very quickly, what they've fixed is the Berserkers in Everbloom. They fixed that spot, all of the spots. The Berserkers now can leap to no path available spots. Throne of the Tides, I haven't made a video talking about the Aazar Sentinels yet, but they do a cast called Crushing Depths. Previously, you could LOS it and force it to recast. That's no longer a thing. The reverse snap spots in Atal now the Juggernauts and the Sards will leap to you. This was kind of what I was speculating in my video talking about the patch notes. I was like, it didn't really make sense that they were nerfing the Juggernaut and the Sard damage. But now, considering the fact that you can't dodge it, it makes sense. On top of that, there's some count stuff. Like the mid pack is now worth a little bit less count, and the dungeon's worth a little bit more. But that's not necessarily in the scope of today's video. The Palad I hadn't had a chance to release a spot talking about the Palad yet. They put a bleed on you. There was a fountain and a bunch of like bookshelves and like there was like a table that you could stand on and you would no path them again. Also been fixed. And Commander Ulthok, his shockwave can now no longer be LOSable. And so now let's kind of talk about the ways that you can deal with these mobs without all these tactics and maybe what you should be looking to do next. So for the Everbloom Berserkers are still kind of jank. They're kind of jank in the sense of if they're CC'd whenever their cast is supposed to go off, it still goes on cooldown, but doesn't cast. And so you can, like, if you have the nameplate cooldown weak aura, you can stun them. If you see that it's up, you can stun them, and then they won't cast at all. Alternatively, you can pre-move it. And by what I mean by that is if you're standing above 25 yards and you start moving before the cast goes off, you're not going to get ticked by the Berserkers. Alternatively, you could just take a tick of damage. Berserkers are pretty sketch. They're not sketch necessarily on Tyrannical, but they're pretty sketch generally. Aazar Sentinels. It's Tyrannical, thank God, but you kind of hope that that goes on very specific classes. Hopefully, ideally, the Demon Hunter. Having Demon Hunter in your group is certainly the person that you want that to go on by far the most. The Crushing Depths, I could see that getting nerfed. You can meld it, but it recasts immediately. You can also spell Reflected if you're playing a warrior, and it does a lot of damage back to the mob, so spell Reflecting is pretty good. For Atal, the Juggernauts are pretty straightforward still. The Merciless Assault cast from the Juggernauts has always been CCable, and it won't recast if you CC it. Now, the cast time is very short. I want to say it's like a 1-second cast, and so that's a bit tricky. For the Sards, the best thing you can do is just kind of like loosely fan out around the mobs and make sure that they're able to stay in melee, because how you want to deal with the Sards is you want to like burst them down as quickly as possible. And so loosely fanning out around them is going to be ideal. Palad Gorgers, I would say something similar to the Sards. I guess at this point you just want to kind of keep them close to melee as opposed to going for any specific spot. Keeping them closer to melee allows them to get cleaved better by a bunch of melee DPS and stuff like that. And so I think that you just try to you're going to try to keep them as close to melee as possible. There's unfortunately no real strats for that. Ulthok, a bit more tricky. Shockwave does a lot of damage, especially on Tyrannical. But ultimately, it's just going to be one of those things that your healer and your group is going to need to make sure that they're pre-positioning really well and making sure that they're getting knocked into the wall as opposed to allowing themselves to line of sight this. This was only a thing for like a couple of days, so I think that most people are really adept at not lining. They're more, these other strats I think were something that was far more common. But yeah, making sure that you just kind of get knocked in the wall on Ulthok is going to be your best bet. I think the best ability to knock back the blobs, by the way, is Disc Priest's Holy Nova. So if you're running with a priest, Holy Nova, but you got to make sure that you're paying attention to when the shockwave is coming out. Now, those are all of the things that I've seen that have been hotfixed under the radar. I'm going to have a video tomorrow talking about some of the Throne of the Tides trash, where I got some secret tech. And I'm sure it's going to get fixed, because they've been fixing all of my videos, but we will overcome this. I will figure out a way to make a video every single day, even while they're hotfixing all of my videos. And we'll be back tomorrow. Goodbye.